Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Waples here, and today we're going to talk about the path toward the Constitutional Convention. As a result of today's lesson, you should be able to identify the role that the Articles of Confederation, the Annapolis Convention, and Shays Rebellion played in leading to the Constitutional Convention. You should also be able to identify Shays Rebellion as a turning point in American history. Let's get started.
The weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation began to bubble up as the newly independent United States tried to govern itself in the wake of the Revolutionary War. Although they had safeguarded themselves against the tyrannical government, the states quickly found that they had traded in for one that was not quite up to the task.
Oh no!
And so begins the path toward the Constitution. The first stepping stone on this path is the weaknesses in the Articles themselves. The Articles lacked an executive branch. They lacked a judicial branch. Under the Articles, the federal government couldn't tax people and manage the growing debt. It couldn't draft an army to defend itself against domestic or even foreign threats. It was difficult to pass laws and downright near impossible to pass amendments. There was no unity among the states, and there was no ability for the federal government to settle disputes among states. In fact, quite often, states threatened war against each other. The first step to rectify some of these issues was at the Annapolis Convention in September of 1786. 12 delegates from 5 states met in Annapolis, Maryland, to discuss issues over interstate trade. However, they quickly realized that many more problems existed within the Articles of Confederation. The convention approved a proposal by Alexander Hamilton that Congress call a convention of all states to Philadelphia to discuss broader problems with the Articles of Confederation. Meanwhile, trouble was a-brewing up in Massachusetts. One of the greatest conflicts that the states felt after the Revolutionary War was mounting debt. Every state managed to be in debt after the war. And some states, like Massachusetts, tried to deal with that debt by increasing taxes. As a result, people that had trouble paying those taxes, like farmers, were often hit the hardest. Many farmers had their farms taken away or were imprisoned if they couldn't pay for their debts.
So much for life and liberty.
Daniel Shays was a Revolutionary War veteran who was in a similar position. Rather than give up his farm, he gathered a bunch of friends, or rebels we'll call them, and began using force to keep courts from sitting and sheriffs from confiscating land. Eventually, Shays and his rebels wanted to make a strike that Massachusetts would remember. They moved on the armory in Springfield, Massachusetts, to seize weapons. The governor of Massachusetts turned to the federal Congress for help. However, the federal Congress couldn't offer any. Under the Articles of Confederation, the federal Congress could not draft an army. Even if it wanted to, it couldn't pay for one without asking the states for money. And ultimately, this issue, no matter how dire, was a state issue, which was left to Massachusetts to fend off on its own. And so the state rose a larger militia, paid for more men, and met Shays and his rebels outside of the armory. 2 to 3 rebels were killed before finally retreating.
Oh no!
And although this rebellion failed, Shays' Rebellion can be seen as a turning point, as it showed the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Although the rebellion had failed, there was no national militia to head off potential rebellions in the future, and people were nervous about this. It pointed out to the entire country that the Articles needed to change. And with this sense of urgency, delegates met at the Constitutional Convention from May to September of 1787. 55 delegates from 12 states met together in Philadelphia to discuss issues with the Articles of Confederation. In general, the delegates fit a certain demographic. They were young, educated, landowning, white men. George Washington was quickly elected president of the convention.
Oh, yeah.
It's important to note that not of the country yet. President of the convention, and president of Congress for that matter, was more entrusted with a gavel to lead the conversation and stripped of the right to vote in the interest of fairness. Washington led the conversation, but he did not enforce laws yet. The original intention of the meeting was to discuss ways to improve the Articles of Confederation. However, after months of debate, it became painstakingly clear that a whole new government needed to be created. This government is known as the Constitution of the United States of America. More on that to come.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You have learned about how the Articles of Confederation, the Annapolis Convention, and Shays Rebellion all led to the birth of our constitutional structure of government. I hope you enjoyed this video lecture, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.